Hi, and welcome back to our channel, Fix My Broken Hair. And today, we're going to do a Black History program. This is the same speech I'm going to do at my church, so I wanted to try it out on y'all. And the reason being, you'll figure it out after I tell you who I'm talking about. So I wanted to start off with this. Those who do not learn your history are doomed to repeat it. I tried to figure out who said that, but all I came up with unknown, so that's where we are. So I don't know. I don't know who said that, but I've heard it many years and I've repeated it several times. But basically, if you don't know where you came from, you're bound to go back. We need to know our Black history. Today, I'm talking about Annie Minerva Turnbo Malone. Annie Malone is also known as Annie Minerva Turnbo. And she was born on August 9, 1877 in Metropolis, Illinois. And her parents were Robert Turnbo and Isabella Cook. And they were former slaves from Kentucky who fled to Illinois during the Civil War. Now, both of her parents passed away when she was young, and they left her and her siblings as orphans. She was number 10 of 11 children. So she was what they call the knee baby. But even though she had these challenges and she was ill a lot, she received some formal education and developed a passion for chemistry and science. In the early 1890s, she moved to Peoria, Illinois, and lived with her older sister, Laura Roberts. It was there that Annie had begun working as a hairdresser and became interested in beauty products and hairstyling techniques that were revolutionizing the industry at that time. In her mid-20s, Annie gained enough knowledge about hair care to start her own beauty business. She set up shop in Lovejoy, Illinois, and sold various products for hair growth and alopecia treatment. She created and sold products under the Wonderful Hair Grower name. Later on, Malone changed the company name to the Pora Company. Annie's business thrived because of the growing African-American middle class in the United States, especially in states like Illinois, where segregation seemed a little better. Now, these women wanted to style their hair to reflect the social aspirations, creating an opportunity for entrepreneurs like Annie to succeed. When she moved to St. Louis in 1902, that's when Annie found great success. Now, many African Americans moved from the segregated South during the Great Migration. My mom had 9 brothers and sisters, and half of them did the migration. They went to St. Louis, and then they went on to Chicago, Illinois. So I have a lot of cousins in Chicago. This created a large market opportunity for Annie. So she opened up a shop on Market Street and advertised her products and services in Black neighborhoods and newspapers. Now, to expand her reach, she hired white salespeople to get her products in white neighborhoods. So Annie's business was thriving because of a product she developed herself that effectively straightened curly African American hair without damage. Sounded to me like it was maybe pressing oil. If somebody knows exactly what that was, y'all leave in the comments. I've been doing a little research, but nobody really said what it was, but I believe it was some type of oil. Well, I know it was some type of oil dealing with petroleum and sulfur. But rather than relying on salons or hairdressers, they went door to door. Now, her success led her to employ others as part of a growing sales team. By 1910, Annie was one of the most successful businesswomen in the Midwest during the time of economic and social progress for African Americans. Annie Malone was a successful businesswoman in 1910s. She wanted to expand her empire and empower African American women. So she started Poro College in St. Louis in 1917. This cosmetology school was an extension of her beauty business and served as a training ground for women who wanted to learn about cosmetics and hair care. Poro College was a big complex with offices, manufacturing facilities, classrooms, training centers, laboratories, an auditorium, dormitories, guest rooms, and a warehouse. It became the main hub for producing and shipping Malone's hair care products. Women could come to Poro College, get trained before starting their own branches of the college elsewhere in the community. Sound like a franchise. Malone was progressive for her time, and she integrated Poro College into the community and provided top-notch services for her workers. The college also offered various amenities like smoking parlors, cafeterias, dining rooms, bakery services, medical centers, laundry services, and a seamstress on site. There were even recreational facilities like gyms and a roof garden. We thought that was something new, didn't we? Overall, Poro College was not just a school, but also a community center that catered to the needs of the students and staff members. Malone was doing well and able to give back, but it didn't last forever. Malone experienced the biggest economic crash ever. Poro College was very successful as a franchise business in the 1920s. It trained many young women in cosmetics and hair care who could then become brand ambassadors in their own cities, often selling Malone's products for years. Overall, Poro College trained over 70,000 women from the late 1910s to the early 1940s. At its peak in the mid-1920s, the college employed about 170 people in St. Louis. Poro franchisees spread across North America and even reached places like the Caribbean, South America, the Philippines, and part of Africa. Annie became a self-made millionaire by that time. In just 1 year, 1926, she paid $40,000 in taxes, which is equivalent to about $750,000 today. Showing how big her business empire had become despite living modestly, she treated herself to a Rolls-Royce car and was reportedly the first woman in Missouri to own one. Annie Malone spread her wealth through Poro College in ways that motivated the business. For example, women who worked as agents for 5 years received expensive service rings to celebrate their dedication to Poro. Madam C.J. Walker, originally known as Sarah Breedlove, was born in Louisiana in 1867 to a free slave and became an orphan at a young age as well. Like Annie, she moved to St. Louis, where she worked for Annie before eventually starting her own hair care business in Denver, Colorado, using a similar product as Annie's. This led to accusations of idea theft from Annie, but the charge didn't stick. And it didn't stick because Annie didn't have her hair growth product patented. During the 1910s and 1920s, both companies grew into multi-million-dollar enterprises, which shows you there's enough for everybody. Annie Turnbo, also known as Annie Malone, gained her fame due to her marriages. She first married Nelson Pope in June 1902, but the marriage was unsuccessful, and they divorced in 1907. Afterwards, she lived with her brother William in St. Louis. In 1914, Annie married Aaron E. Malone, a former school teacher turned door-to-door salesman of religious books. Initially, their marriage was happy, and Aaron became involved in Annie's business. However, things turned sour in the 1920s. As Annie's business empire expanded, she spent more time traveling. In 1927, Aaron filed for divorce and demanded half of her business as part of the settlement, since he claimed to have helped build it. The case received significant media attention both locally and nationally, and eventually Annie settled for a payment of $200,000, which allowed her to maintain control of the company herself, a substantial amount at this time too. Annie's married life was chaotic, but she found solace by using her wealth to support various charitable causes in 1920 and the 1930s. One of her notable donations went to Howard University College of Medicine. a historically black research institution in Washington, D.C. In return, the college honored her with an honorary degree years later. However, Annie's most significant philanthropic efforts were directed toward the St. Louis African American Orphans Home, which held a special place in her heart due to her own childhood experiences. During the 1920s and 1930s, she generously donated millions of dollars in today's currency to the home and served on its board of directors for a substantial period. Annie moved her business to Chicago after her divorce in 1927 and eventually relocated there herself in 1930s. She was so wealthy by then that she bought an entire city block of property. However, tougher times followed. Despite surviving the Wall Street crash and the Great Depression, poor old college business declined throughout most of the 1930s. Annie also had to deal with multiple lawsuits from people trying to claim part of her wealth, which left her financially strained by the mid-1930s. To compensate, she sold some property in St. Louis and managed to stay afloat. In 1939, the original Portal College building became Missouri's first African-American law school. By then, Annie was reducing her involvement in the business, and it continued without her in the late 1930s and 1940s. She spent her final years in Chicago on South Park and suffered a stroke there in the late spring of 1957. Annie passed away shortly after at Providence Hospital at the age of 79. Today, she is remembered as one of the first self-made millionaires and notable African-American philanthropists through various books, TV shows, and an annual parade in St. Louis that celebrates her charitable contributions to orphanages and children's institutions. That is all for Black History. That is all for our Black History. And I will see you all next week with the video on natural hair. But this video was also on natural hair. But I'll see you all next week.